Percent of African Americans with mental illness, 17%. Number of African Americans with mental illness, 6.8 million. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is within the United States population. Latin Hispanic American community, percent of Latin Hispanic Americans with mental illness, 15%. Number of Latin Hispanic Americans with mental illness, 8.9 million. What's up, geeks? It's your guy Q here, aka JGTV, and we are back with another one, guys. And today we're talking about God over culture, still talking about therapy and trauma, but today we're more on the statistical aspect side of things, right? So my last video, we really touched on like prevalence within like mental illness and how much it was impacting Americans as a whole, and then within certain groups, if you would say. This time we're going to be more focused on specific populations, right? So our main goal is to focus on the prevalence of mental illness within specific populations. Now, just like my last video, I'm going to tell you guys to kind of brace yourself for this one, because the statistics are staggering. They were staggering for myself, and I know it's going to be staggering for you guys as well. As far as this aspect goes, growing up, I didn't really hear much about mental illness, right? Like, of course, there were the little jokes about Bellevue. I mean, you had children who were in what we call special ed, aka special education, but no real explanation about what that exactly meant. As children, we just thought, hey, that was probably for bad kids. I got threatened with it a couple times, but it's not like anyone ever came into class and explained to us what mental health exactly meant, or even special education, right? So we kind of were at a loss for words and left to our own childish minds to come up with definitions for these things. Today, what I want to kind of focus on is the prevalence of mental illness within the Black African American community, the Latin Hispanic American community, the Asian American Pacific Islander community, the Native American Alaskan Native community, the multiracial community, and the LGBTQ plus community. Now, the reason why I want to go through all of these different communities is because I want you guys to kind of see how mental illness is impacting everyone as a whole. Not necessarily that there are staggering numbers within specific populations. Some are, but if I'm quite frank with you, all of the numbers were staggering to me. Like, I didn't like these numbers within any race or category. Anyone suffering from mental illness is a heartbreaking thing in general. We're gonna go to the statistics now. So, you guys ready? Here we go. The Black African American community. We're gonna start out with percents first, and then I'm gonna read numbers. So keep in mind, the first number I'm reading is the percentage. The second number I'm gonna be reading is the number of people, right? So, percent of African Americans with mental illness, 17%. Number of African Americans with mental illness, 6.8 million. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is within the United States population. Latin Hispanic American community. Percent of Latin Hispanic Americans with mental illness, 15%. Number of Latin Hispanic Americans with mental illness, 8.9 million. Asian American Pacific Islander community, percent of Asian Americans with mental illness, 13%. Number of Asian Americans with mental illness, 2.2 million. Still a pretty staggering number, guys. Native American Alaskan Native community, percent of Native Americans, Alaskan natives with mental illness, 23%. Number of Native American Alaskan natives with mental illness, 830,000. Multiracial. Now, this, especially the second statistics, I found pretty staggering. Percent of people who identify as being two or more races with mental illness, 25%. People who identify as being two or more races are more likely to report any mental illness within the past year than any other race or ethnic group. I mean, I remember when I was reading these statistics to my wife, and instantly when I said that, my wife was like, "Oh my God, that's me." And I'm just like, "Babe, calm down." I mean, it is a statistic, but I just thought it was crazy. Like when I saw that specific statistic, because it says within the past year, you know, so it's like within a year at any given moment, this is the amount of people that we're looking at, right? About 25% that are saying they struggle with some type of mental illness as long as they're multiracial. That's pretty heartbreaking, guys. The LGBTQ plus community, percent of individuals who identify as LGBTQIA plus with mental illness, 37%. Number of individuals who identify as LGBTQIA plus with mental illness, 3.9 million. Now, I did want to go over those statistics with you guys, which, as you guys can see, pretty staggering numbers. But another thing I wanted us to take a look at was the treatment, right? Because the treatment of mental illness in America is also something that is in grave danger.